What we're going to look at in this video is some of the main features of what I would call the core modules within myosh. So what we're going to look at is the dashboard, actions, hazard, and incident reporting. And we're going to see how these modules interact with one another. We're going to start off with the dashboard since it's open. And let's just talk about what you can see based on the level of access that you have. Now, up in the right-hand corner, you can see I'm logged in as Angela Adminson. This person is an administrator, being given really sweeping powers to make changes to the software. And as such, they're able to not only review the dashboard, but edit the configuration of the dashboard and set dashboards up for other people. So if you look across the top of the dashboard, what you can see is a number of tabs. Each of these tabs has its own graphs, charts, tables, and you are able as an administrator to build tabs for other people and prevent them from either accessing them or from changing them. So what you might want to do, for example, is set up, say, the first 3 or 4 tabs, put in the graphs you want people to see, and then all you do is allow them to have read access. And in that way, they can click on any of these links, and as the data that underlies the graphs changes, the graphs themselves will change, but no one can go into these and ever change them. What they can, however, do if they want to is add new tab, and provided they have the right level of access, they can add a tab for themselves, or they can add a tab that is available to everybody else. So what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll have a look at creating a new tab. Click New Tab. It's a fairly straightforward process. Give it a name, click Add New Tab, and now what we've got is a blank tab. We can then choose any number of graphs, tables, charts from the list that's available. This is a default or library, if you want, of graphs that we've provided. There are around about 70 or 80 of them, and you can select whichever ones you want for your tab. So let's grab a couple. Actions by person. We'll get a pie chart as well, maybe hazards by status, and maybe something that's a little different with some columns. Right, so what we've done is we've created a couple of graphs on our new tab and we've put them in an order that we want them in. Now down the bottom, because I am an administrator, I can make this a shared tab. And over here, I can choose who it is in the organization that can either read them or modify them. Now these are groups. So what you can do as an administrator is you can create groups and add people into these groups. And by then giving these groups access to this tab that you've created, you allow them to either read or modify or both. I'll save this tab because, of course, a dashboard is like anything else. It's like a document. If you don't save it, then the information that you've put on there is not saved. And once it's saved, the new tab's available. Here it is, test tab with the 3 graphs that we added. Now, when it comes to looking at a dashboard, there are a number of things that you can do. First and foremost, there are some items up the top here that allow you to filter on information. What this does is it filters on everything in the dashboard. If I change a filter here and I say I'm only really interested in looking at the Mount Bryant site or the Warner Glen site, what this will do is it will filter my entire dashboard. And you can see in the background that as I'm doing this, the graphs are resetting. Now you can change this at any time. And when you set a filter on the dashboard, what you can see in this hierarchy section up here is the word site. Now that's because I only filtered on site. If I'd filtered on department and site, then you would see department and site over here. It's important to pay attention to what's up here because what you don't want to do is come into your dashboard and think that you're only looking at, well, you might be looking at what you think is really good data, but you're only seeing half the picture because you've filtered the dashboard on a number of items. So to get rid of that, you can click reset, or you can remove one or more of the filters and your information comes back. So that's limiting what you see or filtering what you see on the whole dashboard. But in each of these dashboard graphs, charts, etc., there are typically some filters that are built in. So what you can do is you can say, in this case, you know what, actions by person. I don't want to see all of the actions from every person in the organization. I just want to see the actions for the people who report to me. And the people who report to me are Tom Jones, Peter Adams, and Angela Adminson. So what I'll do is I'll go and get their name. There's Angela, there's Peter, and I'll just scroll down to get Tom's name, and I'll save that graph. And what that does is now filters by just the people who report to me. Now I could again go and filter on hierarchy, and it might be that Tom doesn't work in the filter that I select from this list, in which case he will have no actions, or he'll actually disappear from the list because he's not in the filter. So again, you've got to pay attention. And if you look here in this unfiltered graph, what you can see is the little filter icon, and in this one there's a tick showing you that filters are active. So be aware that it's quite easy to filter on whatever you like, but it's also quite easy to miss the fact that you filtered on something and think that you're seeing really good stuff when actually behind the scenes there's a few more things going on. Again, we can reset or we can uncheck items. So if I no longer want to see what's going on with Pete, I'll just uncheck him, save it, and Pete disappears. Quite simple to manage. Just be careful that you know what you're doing. Now, a few other things about the dashboard. The other thing that you can do, now that we've added some standard graphs, you can build your own graph. We've highlighted our tab. We can click on Configure. And what that does is puts our tab into edit mode. And once it's in edit mode, what we can do is we can click on this option here, Manage Widgets. And Manage Widgets enables us to edit an existing widget, a widget being a graph, a pie chart, a table, whatever. Or better still, we can create our own widget. Click on Next, and what you get is a wizard. And the wizard enables you to create a graph of your own type. Now, we won't go through creating a graph here. There is another video on creating graphs for the dashboard, and that does a much better job than I'll be able to do here. But it's important to know that you are able to create your own graphs should you need to. Now, these graphs can be created for a particular module. So if you want a graph for incident reporting, perfect, you can go and build it here. If you want something really, really complex where incident reporting is related to contractors and all their hazards, and you need to draw information from multiple modules, then you'll have to come back to us because that's something that we will need to build. These things typically don't take a huge amount of time to build, but again, it really does depend on the complexity of what you require. Now, there are a few other things about the dashboard that you can do. We mentioned here on the top left-hand corner that you've got a hierarchy. You've also got the ability to set a date filter. And again, this date filter that you apply applies to every graph on the dashboard. If we look across on the right-hand side, however, there are options to export, to link, and to create reports. The one that's export is export. You can just export a graph or export the entire tab. So if I wanted to, say, export every graph on this page, what I can do is I can click export. If I want to export individual graphs, there's an export option down here on the graph themselves. If you want to create a link to a graph, you can enter all of the information in this pop-up dialog box, fill out a date range, fill out a hierarchy, copy the link, and send this to somebody. When they click on it, they can open the document or open the link, and they'll see the information from the tab with this set of filters that you've built in. Bear in mind that when you send this to somebody, it's going to ask them for a login, because what they're doing is they're opening up the dashboard, which is reflecting live data. So you can't send this to somebody who actually is outside of the system and doesn't have any access to myosh. The other cool aspect of this is that if you click on reports, what you're able to do is you're able to set up repeating reports that come from the dashboard. So for example, if we clicked on this, called this a report name of, I don't know, new report, you type in the subject might be end of month report, the recipient might be sending it to me, but this could be somebody who's outside of the business. The target tab, so if you recall, there are a series of tabs across the top here, and it might be that one of them, the end of month global report, you're happy with the last month, previous month, and you might want to filter this by some level of the business if you're particularly interested in doing so. And then what you can say is you want to run this monthly, and I want this to go off on the second day of the month, every month at 5 o'clock in the morning. And when I add that schedule, that's exactly what it will do. And the person in the recipient email, or the people in the recipient email separated by a comma, will receive this monthly report in the form of a PDF. Okay, so enough about the dashboard. What we're now going to do is we're going to have a look at some of the general navigation within myosh, and this applies to every module. We'll use the incident reporting module as the main place to showcase this functionality. We'll move to actions to show you one item that's not really applicable in incident reporting. These are views. what we're looking at now, and this shows you pretty much, in this case, incidents, every incident that's ever occurred. And you can see down the bottom that there have been a total of 83 over time. Now, the view itself is a really good tool, because what you're able to do is you're able to take these columns and drag them around. So if I want to have a view by classification, I just drag classification into the first column. I click on the word classification, it reorders them in alphabetical order. If I click on it again, it does a reverse order. And what I can also do whenever you see one of these drop down arrows is you can filter on any of these. So it might be that I'm really only interested in injuries and equipment. And when I'm done, it will filter by those. Document number is pretty much the same. You can either type in a document number, it'll find it for you, or you can order them by document number. You can filter by sites. So again, we might only be interested in the site. Brief description is quite nice, because what you can do is you can type information into this column header. A brief description is a free text field. So what that means is, let's say I'm interested in finding every incident with the word fall in it. So I can type in the word fall or part of the word fall, and it will find every incident for me. Anything with a date field, you can build in a date range. Status, again, is fairly straightforward. It's a drop-down list, and you can filter on some status. Now, what we've done is we've actually built a fairly complex view here. We've got multiple classification filters. We've got multiple sites. We've looked for a word in brief description, and we might also have put in a date range. What we want to do is make sure that we don't lose this, because we don't want to go somewhere else and then come back in and have to redo all of this filtering for this view. So over on the far right hand side, what I'm able to do is save the view. Now you can overwrite an existing view, or you can create a brand new view. So I'll click save, and once I click save, what happens is up at the top you can see under the user views here that I'm now looking at the classification and site view. And if I drop this list down, I can see all of the other views that were created in the past that I can click on and review data in a different manner. So it might be that I'm only interested today in seeing the Mount Bryant incident. I can click on that, and what it does is it shows me only the Mount Bryant incidents, because I'd previously filtered on that. If I want to go back to the one I just created, classification and site, click on it, and there it is. So that's some simple manipulation of the data. Of course, what would also be nice is if I could delete this view if I no longer required it, and you can do that using the Manage Views option. So what I can do is I can click on maybe this one here, don't like that. I can either rename it to something a bit more reasonable, or I can simply delete it. And of course, I can only delete it if I have the correct level of access. Another useful feature is the fact that now that I've created this view, it would be nice to export it into something like Excel or somewhere else where I can use it. And I can do that too. So I can export it to PDF, Excel, CSV. I can also import. Now this is quite useful too, because what I'm allowed to do here is if I click on download template, it allows me to extract a template of data to Excel where I can fill out information in this case, incident reports, and then use this wizard to later import the data. But what it does is it asks me if I want to export the current documents. Now, if I export the current documents, let's say I knew that I had a whole bunch of documentation for a particular site that was fairly unreliable, and I want to manage that data. I wanted to change it in bulk. What I can do is I can do the filter, save the view, export the view with the data in it, edit the data in Excel, and then re-import the edited data, and it will be updated in myosh, which means you don't have to go into every single document in myosh, laboriously editing the document and changing it. So what you would do is you would export the information, you would then rerun this import wizard, and you would simply follow through with the options until such time as you had imported all of the data. If you make mistakes, it will give you an error message and tell you what to do. You go back, you fix it, and you re-import again until you get it right. Now, if we look at the top of the view, what you can see is a time period. So this is a bit like filtering, a quick filter like we had in the dashboard. So you can filter on any of these values. We've seen the user views. We can see here as well a form. Now, by default, it is the main form within the incident module. Now, some of these modules may have more than one form, and this one certainly does. So if you want to see work hours, what you need to do is change the form. If I do that, what it does is it shows me the work hours that are used in order to calculate the frequency rates for the incidents that you record. Now, typically, particularly with large organizations, these would be pulled in automatically via an API, and you wouldn't really have to bother with this. But if you want to know where they are, this is where they are. So again, be careful. If you come into a module like incident reporting and you see a whole bunch of documents and you open one up and you find it's not something that you were expecting, because up here it says work hours, the reason for it is because what you've done is you've selected the incorrect module form. So if I switch this back to incident reports, what it will do is take me back. Okay, so let's have a look at another nice feature that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is the calendar view. Now, this doesn't really apply in incident reporting. It's more appropriate in actions. So if we just have a look at the actions module, what we can do, and we can do this in any module, is we can color code the status of a workflow for that module. So in this instance, what we've done is we've color coded overdue actions as red with a cross in them. It makes it more intuitive. You don't have to go and look to see what the status is. You can, as mentioned, you can do this in any module. But what you can also do, and in actions it's fairly appropriate, is you can set the module to display the view in calendar mode. So if I click on calendar, what this does is switches the view to a calendar type view. Now there's only one here, but if I go back a few months, so we'll just click previous a couple of times, and we're back in September last year, and here you can see there were an awful lot of actions happening. So what this enables me to do is see by day what actions are coming up. I can click on the link, open the document, and deal with them. And when I get sick and tired of the calendar view, I can click on record list and turn it back into what it was. These view headings, the columns, these are a default set of columns. As an administrator, you can change these if you like when you go into the administration section, and we will have a look at that in a following presentation. But if we look over on the right-hand side at the three horizontal lines, what you can see here is a list of columns that you can use. Now, one of them wasn't used, project. But if I wanted to say remove a column, let's say I'm really not interested in seeing the document number. I untick the document number, it removes it. I untick the status, this column here, it removes it. I want to put it back. I tick it, it puts it back. Now this list of additional columns, this is something that, again, as an administration manager, you can change. And if we go back just for a moment into our incident report, and we go over to the three horizontal lines here, you'll see that I've got an awful lot more options. So if for example, I wanted to see the supervisor, the person who investigates an incident, well, I can do that. It pops it up, and then of course what I can do is I can filter on whomever it is that I want to filter on. The last item I want to talk about when it comes to general navigation are these little numbers here on the left-hand side of the wording in the navigator. These tell me that I have, in this case, 10 actions to review, 5 incident reports, 6 contractor management documents. If I take my mouse and I hover over these, it shows me the actual documents that I need to look at. So if I click on one of them, it will actually open the document, and here the document is. And then I can click on edit and review the document. But maybe what I want to do is I also want to go and have a look at one of those incidents, front-end loader. And on top of that, I'd like to go and have a look at this health management document that's been assigned to me. So what I've done is I've opened 3 documents. Now what I haven't done is I haven't overwritten each of the documents that I opened in succession. If I want to go and have a look at all of those documents, I need only take my mouse over to the right-hand corner. There's a little arrow. I can click on that arrow and I can actually see all the documents I have open, and I can flick between them. You can have as many documents open as you like. And of course, because the little crosses are here, you can close them too. If you want to see all of the documents that have been assigned to you in one place, there's something called My Activities. And that lists absolutely everything. The very last thing I want to have a look at now is, and we'll just go back into incident reporting for this. We mentioned that you could type in the word fall or fell, and it would show you all of the incidents that had that word in the brief description field, which was a free format text field. But there's also a search option. And if you click on the drop down arrow in the search option, you can type in a word, you can search, or you can filter by the modules you want to look in. You can type in authors' names, you can put in a date range for your search term. So what we'll do is we'll search for a term, like the word foot, and have a go at that. Now what this has done is it's returned a whole bunch of documents that contain the word foot, and they're not just incident reports, they're documents, hazards, chemicals, etc. Now notice also that when I search, I have the ability to limit the modules that I'm searching, limit the names of the people who created the documents, and put in some sort of date range. So it's a fairly powerful search that enables me to fill in some nice filters in order to extract the information in a way that I want it. Okay, so what we've had a look at is some standard functionality within the solution, and we'll leave it here, and in the next video we'll go in and we'll have a look at how incident reporting, hazards, and actions actually integrate together to form a cohesive safety environment. We'll create an incident report, and from that incident report we'll generate a hazard, we'll generate some actions and link to other hazards, and we'll see how the system actually functions, as I say, as a cohesive whole.